Our guest in the upper echelon this week is Jeanette Hern, Deputy Chief Executive of Grant Thornton, Johannesburg. Jeanette, you were appointed to that position at the beginning of last month, the 1st of July. You joined Grant Thornton as a postgraduate student at WITS. You've been with the firm for 2 decades. That's an awful long time.
It's been a fascinating career. It's an interesting pinnacle in my career now to have to reach the position of Deputy CEO. But it's one that it's a journey that I've enjoyed thoroughly over the last couple of 20 years, as you say.
Last couple of years, last couple of decades. 20 years at the same company. Are we in a different space today? Are we in a space where perhaps the graduates of 2013 might not be in the same job, or at least the same career, in the same firm by 2033?
I think it differs from professional to professional. So even if I look back at those graduates that started with me 20 years ago, there are only a very small handful that have stayed in the same career. And what drives it is whether or not you're able to achieve growth and development within your career. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to move. So if you are with a company that offers you the challenge and that offers you the opportunity to grow and to change the things that you're doing, I think the graduates of today might find the same opportunities. The trouble is that very often people perceive that they need to leave an organization in order to change what they're doing. And that's not always the case.
You have a BCom law and a Bachelor of Accounting. What attracted you to commerce, law, and then accounting?
I always say it's an interesting story because I came from a family that wasn't a professional family. So having entered into a career as an accountant, starting off with law, it was almost by default. And therefore, graduates today, I think, have a lot more information about what it is that they're going to be doing in the careers that they are able to enter into. In my situation, I was putting myself through varsity, and I decided that, when I looked at law, I needed to stay full-time for a much longer period. Commerce gave me the opportunity to start working and earning money, and it was not really an option, and that's how I landed up in accounting. Looking back, it was actually a very fortunate set of circumstances.
So this wasn't something at the age of 16, for example, that you always knew you'd be doing?
Oh, no. At that stage, I was traveling the world and running hotels and doing all sorts of interesting things like that.
Where did you spend time overseas?
Overseas, I've done quite a lot of traveling over the years. So we've spent time in the States, traveling on business more so in terms of training and conferences and things like that. I haven't actually lived overseas as such. We've traveled as family, backpacked through Europe, taken some time in Turkey and Malaysia and Thailand. I think it all opens the the wider understanding of the world if you see how other people live.
With a corporate finance background and a corporate finance career at Grant Thornton, no doubt advising on all manner of transactions over the past decade or so, without naming the firm or the transaction, perhaps we can talk a little bit more broadly. Has there been a really, really tough transaction where you were involved in that transaction? You weren't really sure that you'd ever get across the line?
Yes, in fact, there's been one that we've worked on recently as advisors in terms of an Indian company investing into South Africa within the pharmaceutical industry. And that transaction took over a year to finalize from the very beginning, and to actually work with the cross-border participants, working with the Indian investors and the local JSE and the requirements and the local investors, and actually making sure that they all come together is quite a challenge. And it's all about working with the relevant people and making sure everybody's on track.
Is it tougher when the firm is listed on the JSE?
It is, because you do have the regulations, you've got processes that you need to follow, you have very many stakeholders, and you need to make sure all the stakeholders' interests are looked after. And it's not just a family that is selling their business. And so you do need to make sure that all your I's are dotted and your T's crossed.
Jeanette, gender equality is something very close to your heart. 28% of women are in leadership positions in South Africa. That's a recent stat that I picked up. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a good thing that it's 28. It's a bad thing that it should be higher than 28. If we look at the number of women that come in and start as chartered accountants, then more than 50% of them are actually women. The fact that only 28% of them go on to be in senior positions means that there are people dropping off along the way. And it's a statistic that I think arrives because of very many different circumstances, but one that we should be driving to change.
Internally in Grant Thornton, that number's a lot higher.
That is. And I think that's probably one of the reasons that I've been with Grant Thornton for 2 decades. Grant Thornton has enabled a situation where women are able to have a career, a very successful career, and also have a family life and achieve the appropriate work-life balance. And that's probably the reason why many of our senior women stay.
As far as executive management goes, especially with listed companies, we spoke with someone not too long ago and really looked at the representativity on boards, not only from a gender point of view, also from a race, culture, and background point of view. I was quite shocked actually to find out that if you look at the top 40 on the JSE, I think there's only one female CEO in Maria Ramos, head of the Barclays Africa Group. That number's probably a bad thing. That's not a good thing.
No, it's a very bad thing. And in fact, some of the research that we've done supports what you say. In fact, less than 5% of the positions at the very senior echelon are held by women. I've done a lot of thinking over the years as to why this actually happens. And I think it's a combination of the fact that many of the listed companies in South Africa remain an all-boys club, if we can call it that. And it's often not what you know, but who you know. And that plays a very strong role in the situation. The other part of it is that very often the sacrifices that are needed to be made in order to run one of your big top listed companies means that you aren't able to achieve a proper work-life balance. And I would say that many successful women are happy to be a deputy CEO or to take a board position that isn't the CEO, where they're able to achieve both without having to give up the work-life balance.
How do we change that? How do we improve that figure?
First of all, I think what we need to do is understand that the value that a woman can bring is very different to that of a man, and that if you are judging your potential appointees on the same set of criteria, you need to change those criteria, because you're never going to achieve what a woman can bring to the table is not what a man can bring to the table, and also just trying to break some of the paradigms that exist within the appointments.
Jeanette, what keeps you awake at night?
Education in this country and how we actually get it right. For me, the future of the country is dependent on making sure that our education system is good and that we're able to offer the youth of today the opportunity to do the things that I've done, to be able to go to university without having I came from a background where I wasn't living with professionals and I didn't have the funds to be able to go to university, but at that stage bursaries were available and I had a decent government education, and I think if we can give that to the youth of today, we will have achieved a lot. If we aren't able to get that right, I do worry of the future of my children and the youth in the country.
As far as graduates are concerned, are we producing quality graduates?
We should be producing more. The problem that we have is the number of maths and science graduates, school leavers with maths and science that come through. And that is a particular challenge when you're dealing with the accounting profession, the medical profession, the engineering profession. And certainly from our perspective in Grant Thornton, when we're looking to appoint graduates into the CA path, there are not enough people out there. If we could take more graduates in, we would be happy to do so, as would many of our counterparts, which tells me that there are not enough people coming through the profession.
Can we bridge that gap, or is the future, or is that group of people who don't have maths and science at matric level, is that lost? Is that a lost group of people?
You need to bridge it by starting at the beginning, because unfortunately maths and science is not something that is taught. It's something that is learnt at a very young age. The one thing that is reassuring to see, though, is the number of institutions that are actually trying to address that. St. Stithians College, for example, has a Saturday school whereby they bring in people from the townships and they teach them maths and science. SAICA has a thing called Tatuka, where they are actually trying to bridge the gap in terms of bringing in and coaching students in the rural areas on maths and science. So I think we need to, the business community needs to continue investing in those initiatives.
Jeanette, final question, and I'll ask all our guests in the upper echelon this question. What motivates you?
The ability to make a change and the ability to change people's lives and to actually make a difference. And, when you sit in the position of leadership within an organisation like Grant Thornton, our reach goes beyond the people that work within Grant Thornton. It's to their families and to our clients. And through that, we can actually deliver growth into the community and actually help individuals achieve what they're able to achieve.
Jeanette Hern is Deputy Chief Executive of Grant Thornton, Johannesburg.